Hi everyone, my name's Quintin Davies and I'm an artist based in Aberdeenshire in Scotland. I thought I'd make some videos to try and share some of the techniques that I do when I'm painting oil paintings, and in this example I'm going to be doing a landscape painting of a mountain called Ben More in the Isle of Mull in Scotland. In this first episode we'll be dealing with the compositional sketch and the tonal underpainting, which is important to establish the main dark areas and the main light areas in the painting before applying any colour. In later episodes I'll cover stages of the main colour blocking and also detail phases, and then finally finishing off the painting with any glazes that might be needed just to adjust the tone here and there. So to be sure to catch those episodes, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, doing that red button down there. And also I have an Instagram and a Facebook page and also a website, which the details should be on here somewhere. Okay, let's get started. Okay, this is the compositional sketch. I'm using a piece of MDF to do the painting on. It's approximately 12 by 14 inches that's been primed and then sanded down, because I really like to have quite a smooth surface for the detailed style that I like to do. Of the sketch is to just mark out the broad main elements of the picture and to try and get the proportions right, and you can probably see I'm measuring on the photograph for that. No detail is really necessary at this stage because it's going to be painted over, but it gets the decision process of marking out where things are, gets that out of the way before the tonal underpainting is done. And remember, nothing's set in stone and it can be adjusted later. Okay, so this is me starting off the tonal underpainting. I'm using a diluted with white spirit mixture of burnt umber to do this, and I'm applying it really thinly so to keep the fat over lean rule. As the sky is typically the lightest part of any landscape painting in most cases, then in a minute you'll see I'll try to remove some of the excess paint with a rag just to try and get that lightness in the sky there. It's all going to be over painted, and it also ensures that any white canvas is gone, and if anything sticks through the subsequent layers then it doesn't show up as white. Now the purpose of this tonal underpainting is to establish the main dark areas and the main light areas of the painting without the complication of colour, and this is actually done far more simply just using a monochromatic approach. I'm using a photographic reference for this picture taken by myself, and I don't have any problem with using pictures. Some people have, some purists have problems with people using pictures, photographs of painting, but I don't see any problem with it at all. Okay, the sky is going to be quite a simple blue in this picture because I don't want added complications or distractions of the main event, which is the sort of tidal creek looking out into the mountain. So here I'm establishing the main form of the hills there of Ben More. So I'm trying to keep the brushwork effectively following the contours as much as I can, and also trying to mark out the darker rock areas. I've left off some of the mountain because I want to let the paint dry a little bit before I move on to doing the lighter section of it, so it doesn't all blend into each other. So I'm starting off now in the foreground, and really the foreground here in this case, this sort of shingle bank is a lot darker than anything else, and this will probably be the darkest point in the whole picture. I'm not worrying about any details here, I'm just trying to get the main lay of the land put in. Now, the underpainting should guide subsequent layers if it's done correctly, but it shouldn't dictate it. There's no reason why you can't change the tonal balance of the picture later on, because it might not work out how you initially planned. But it really is a useful technique to get a painting right, because if the tonal balance is not right in the picture, particularly a landscape, then it really will not hold together in the final image. For the right hand bank here, I'm also using a rag just to spread out some of the paint. helps me get into the finer areas and also makes for a lighter, more even tone. So some of the lightest areas of the picture is going to be the reflections on the water in the creek, and I want to give this as part of the foreground focus of the picture, which will lead the eye going back into the distance where Ben Moore is. So this part is actually has to be quite light. On the left here, there's some grassy areas just above the high water mark, and they have little cliffs on them. So I think these areas will be the darkest area of all, I think, in the entire painting. So I'm not worrying too much about the details here, just trying to get the general form of what's going on. And you can see I darken it even further still. Now I'm trying to get some of the texture through in that shingle area just by making effectively dabs of paint in a sort of horizontal attitude. I'm now working in some of the seaweed areas and trying to make this area a bit more dynamic so it actually leads the eye going into the background. So I'm making the seaweed there a little bit more elongate, as if it's been left out by the ebb tide. Okay, we're going to skip ahead in a bit. There we go, and we can see I've just worked up more of that same sort of pattern in the foreground areas and also a little bit more in the middle distance. When using photographic reference, you really don't have to be a slave to the photograph unless you're trying to depict something accurately that's very familiar. Whereas in this case, I've got a lot of leeway to do what I want to make it look like a better painting. I'm returning back to the mountain now to try and put in a bit more of the rock formations shown there. The layering you see in the mountain there is actually a series of volcanic lava flows that were developed in the Tertiary related to the opening of the North Atlantic, and it's important to try and capture things like this to add realism to the painting. So to give the mountain some three-dimensionality, I'm actually making the shadow areas quite a bit darker than they were in the photograph, because they looked a bit flat. So you can alter things from the photographs, but you have to be careful that it still maintains the overall tonal balance of the picture. So there I am now, just filling in the lighter areas of the missing white, and that gives me a rough base layer to work on in subsequent layers. Okay, I'm returning back to the foreground, just adding more sort of horizontal layers, and you notice in the middle ground those horizontal features seem to become more consistent and thinner and closer together, and that gives the effect of perspective going up to the distant shoreline. I'm using a small dagger brush for most of this work. It gives you the ability to make a variety of marks on the canvas without having to change the brush all the time. It's pretty useful for doing these horizontal dark areas you can see in this grass work here. Okay, I'm just lifting the brush up a bit to get some sense of verticality to the grass there, just as a reminder for me to introduce that when I do the overlayers. And here I'm just adding a bit more complexity in my darks in the foreground to represent sort of shadows behind stones. And similarly here I'm adding a bit more of a extension to the dark areas of the seaweed, which gives it more of a dynamic look, looking and into the picture more. Now darkening up that right hand bank a bit more, adding some more horizontal banding in the middle distance. And I wasn't quite happy with this bank, so I rub it out a bit and start adding some more horizontal features so it's similar to the left-hand bank. Okay, we're getting near completion of this now. I'm just working up a few more darks and a bit more interest in that hillside there. There's actually quite a few outcrops of this dark basaltic material forming layers in the rock. And this extends into that foreground there. So really, these things give the shape of the hillside, reflect the contours, and they're really quite important to capture to make a hillside look realistic. A few more bits and pieces here, and I think we're about done. And here is an image of the final underpainting. And this gives me a good foundation to try and build on in the next colour stages without having to worry about what the colour is going to be. Okay everyone, I think that just about wraps up that episode for today. If you like what you see, please remember to subscribe. It's really quite important, encourages me to do it. If you have any comments, please stick them down below. And hopefully I'll get ready for the next few episodes in due course. Thanks for watching. Bye.